Just a reminder that today is the third Sunday of the month, and so at the end of the homily there'll be question and answer discussion, so get your thinking caps on. And I want to just introduce the first reading and say why I chose it. I do not believe that the first sacrament that a child receives is baptism. I think the first sacrament a child receives is family. It is family that initiates a child into incarnation and into community. And I do not believe that the last sacrament somebody receives on the way out is extreme unction or the anointing of the sick. I think it's the sacrament of family. The family that escorts the pilgrim on the journey until they reach the antechamber to the hereafter. And there are many levels of family. So there's the nuclear family, which is parents and kids. And then there's a multi-generational version, which may include grandparents and even great-grandparents. And then there's the extended family system, which contains cousins and uncles and aunts and even in-laws. And so today I would like to dedicate the Mass, my Mass today, to a member of my extended family who died during the week. A 23-year-old boy called Michael Lane, who battled cancer for 3 years, and who died just a few days ago. Michael's dad is Ray, and Ray is married to a woman called Niamh, and Niamh is a sister of Jackie, who's married to my brother Seamus. And so Michael and I are kin. We're extended family kin. And during his funeral celebration a few days ago, somebody read the poem called Invictus. You may have heard of it. It's written by a British poet in 1875, a guy called William Ernest Henley. And it's been used many, many times to speak about very famous people. Nelson Mandela read it in prison to his fellow prisoners to give them the courage to stay going. And Barack Obama read it at Mandela's funeral in South Africa later. So it's been read many times to record the lives of very famous people. Now, Michael Lane's name is not going to appear in any history book, but it is inscribed in the hearts of all those who knew him and loved him. He was a man of tremendous courage for his young years, who faced his illness with extraordinary patience and fortitude and courage. And so I'd like to dedicate this reading today to Michael, to his dad Ray, and to Niamh and to the extended family, and to send the love of this community from Palo Alto in California, across the continental USA, across the Atlantic, to Cork in Ireland. Out of the night that covers me, black as a pit, from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Words inspired by God.
Thanks be to God.
For 14 years, from 1972 until 1986, I lived right on the equator, literally on the equator. I passed over the equator several times every day in East Africa, in Kenya. And at the equator, you get pretty much 12-hour days, 12-hour nights. And people there followed the sun. Pretty much everybody went to bed when the sun went down, and they got up when the sun got up. But being Irish, there was no way I was going to go to bed at 6 o'clock. Or get up at 6 o'clock. And so long after the entire village had gone to sleep, I'd have candles in my house, and I'd be reading. All kinds of stuff fascinated me. And in the mid-1970s, I got fascinated by psychology, and particularly Jungian psychology. I started reading a whole bunch of Jungian psychology. And two of my favorite authors were John Sanford and Morton Kelsey. You see, ringing your head, good. They were both Episcopalian priests and Jungian analysts, and I ate up their work. And so I began to record my dreams beginning in 1978. And at this stage, I have about 10 journals filled with dreams that I have recorded over the years. And so dreams became really, really important to me. And what I figured out was that it's like if I'm growing a garden and I've got lots of flowers, lots of plants and trees and bushes and whatever, and I'm trying to really optimize their growth. But all I can see is what's happening above the ground. If somehow I could go underground and I could see what the roots are doing and what nitrogens are in the soil, how the water is, if I could read that down there, I'd have a much better chance of figuring out how to treat my garden. And that's what the dreams became. They were like the ability to go deep underground and find out the root systems, what they were kind of living with and what the deficiency may have been, so I could make differences in my waking consciousness above the ground. So I began to record these dreams. And if you ever work with your dreams, you begin to realize very quickly that you start to get a whole bunch of what Jung defined as synchronicities, that your outside world begins to model what's happening inside. So at one stage, I made a glossary of the symbols or the archetypes that kept recurring in my dream life, and then matching them against what was happening in my waking life. So I could create a glossary when X appeared in my dream, Y was going to appear in my life outside. So very, very quickly, I could figure out what they were saying to me. I'll just give you 2 examples. So I came to the United States. I came to out of Kenya in 1996, and I lived for a year in London, in Mill Hill, northwest London. And I was studying Jungian psychology, and I was in analysis. I met with an analyst twice a week. And of course, we started working with my dreams immediately. So in early October, I just started working with him. I had this really powerful dream where I'm in Mill Hill, in the town of Mill Hill. And I've opened a little bank account at Lloyd's Bank in Mill Hill. And in my dream, I go down to the ATM machine and I put in my card and it asks me for my PIN code, and I punch in my PIN code and it says, I don't recognize it. Wow. So I pull the card out, put it back in again, ask me for my PIN. Very carefully, I put in my PIN. I don't recognize it. So I try a third time and it says, go inside and talk to a teller. Okay. So I pull out my card, I go inside and I do my transaction with the teller, and then I come out. So I report this dream to the analyst. We start working on it. He says, well, from what you've told me already, here's what it seems like to me. You've lived a very, very kind of private life for 14 years in Kenya. You lived in very remote areas. You didn't have a spiritual director, you didn't have a therapist, you didn't have a counselor. And so you had to, on your own, try to access your own treasure. The money represents treasure, or your wisdom, or knowledge, or whatever. You're trying to access that constantly on your own. Like you're going to an ATM machine, and you're trying to pull out this wisdom. And now it's telling you it's time to work with somebody else. So I'm the bank teller, and I'm going to help you kind of withdraw your cash, or put your money in the bank, or whatever you need to do with it. So I said, all right, that makes sense to me. Great. I declare to God 2 weeks later, 2 weeks to the date, it actually happens. In waking consciousness, I'm in Mill Hill downtown. I go up to the ATM machine. I put my card in. It asks me for my PIN code. It rejects it. I put it in 3 times. It rejects it and says, go in and see a teller. I go in and see a teller. I do my transaction, come out, and there's another guy outside and he's just spewing money out into his hand. So I got it. Okay, so there's the glossary now. When I dream about ATM machines refusing me money, it means I need to be talking to a therapist. So I lived for a year in London, collected over 900 dreams in that period of time. Then I came to the States in June 1987, and in September 87, I started at ITP, doing my PhD. And they insisted, because it was a psychology program, that everybody, all the students, be in therapy themselves. But I couldn't afford to be in therapy, not at the rates that they charge here. Psychologists are deadly here. I couldn't afford to be in therapy. I had enough money to pay my school fees, and that was it. Now, luckily enough, I was working at St. Albert's, where I met Manny and Margie, so I had board and keep. But I couldn't afford to pay school fees and books and also be in therapy. So I resisted doing it. So I had to open a bank account in the Bank of America down in Lytton Street down here, Lytton Street, Palo Alto. And it's about a 4 or 5 story building. And I go up there on December the 7th. It's about 7 o'clock in the evening, so it's dark outside, but the whole building is all lit up, all the floors. And I stick my card in, all of a sudden, and the whole building goes dark. Literally, every light in the building goes out. And I can't get my card back. My card is gone. I'm looking at it. What the hell am I going to do? So I have to go back next day, December the 8th, and I go in and I explain the situation. and they retrieved my card. I said, what happened yesterday? They said, there was a power surge that blew out all the electricity in the building. So I said, okay. I reckon somebody was telling me something. So I kept deferring. I declared to God, every single time I went down to the bank on Lytton Street, there'd be 3 or 4 people ahead of me. There'd be servers, they'd get their money or whatever. I'd go up, it would shout down and would say, this machine is temporarily out of order. Yeah, every single time. And so finally, I met a therapist, a Jungian analyst, a beautiful woman called June Matthews, who took me on for almost nothing. And I worked with June for many years. That was the last time ever I'd been rejected at an ATM machine. So these are the kind of synchronicities that happen when you start paying attention to your dreams. The outside world and the inside world begin to correspond. So obviously, I'm going to be talking about dreams this morning. And I'm going to make 5 main points rather quickly, and then open it up. So the first point is, I'm going to just offer a few definitions of my own around dreams. And then secondly, I'm going to talk about biblical dreams. And then thirdly, I'm going to talk about what I call the twin illusions of time and space. And then fourthly, I'm going to talk about some of the jobs that dreams do for us. And then finally, I'll call it lucid dreaming, lucid living, lucid dying. So that's what I'm planning to do. So let me start out with a few definitions. In waking consciousness, which hopefully we're all in at this stage, I don't see anybody asleep yet. In waking consciousness, all of our information comes through our sensorium. There's an old, Thomistic adage that says, nihil est in intellectu quod non ante fuerit in sensu. There is nothing in the intellect which is not first in the senses. So we drink in data from our senses, and then this black box operates on it, creates perceptions, and the perceptions lead to experiences, and the experiences create our model of reality. And then a bunch of us get together, and we share our models of reality, and we create what is called a consensual reality. And this consensual reality may vary from culture to culture. But it all depends on the data gathering which happens through the sensorium. So that's what happens in waking consciousness. When we're dreaming, we skip the first step completely. There's no data gathering happening in the dream state. You go straight into the thought processes. And so the entire reality that you encounter in a dream is created by the thoughts in your mind. There's no data being gathered whatsoever. Just whatever thought you have, you create that reality. So it's very, very different from the waking state. And then there's a special state of dreaming that's called lucid dreaming, where when you're dreaming, you realize that you're dreaming, and then that confers great benefits upon you, because the laws of physics do not apply when you're dreaming. As I'll say, time does not exist, causation does not exist, and space does not exist. So you can fly or walk on water when you're dreaming. So it's very important to realize if you're in a dream, if you know you're in a dream, it's lucid, you can do a whole bunch of investigation that you can't do in the waking state. So that becomes really important. So I'm going to make up 2 more terms then and define them. I'm going to make up the term dreamline. And by dreamline, I'm going to mean all of the dreams you've ever had in all of the lifetimes you've ever lived in all of the dimensions of which you've been a part. So there's this concatenation of dreams that you've strung together over your entire existence, and I'm going to call that your dream line. And then I'm going to call a term, I call it the dreamscape. And the dreamscape is like the Akashic records in Hinduism. It is all of the dream lines of all of the creatures that have ever come into manifestation. It's like this extraordinary tapestry into which all of the dream lines are woven. So that's the kind of the terminology I'll use this morning. So that's the first point I'll make. So let me go then into biblical dreams. And it becomes really, really important. This was pointed out by John Sanford in his one of his books, a great book called Dreams, God's Forgotten Language, in which he points out that in Hebrew, the word dream and the word vision are synonyms. So there's a great passage in the prophet Joel in the Hebrew Scriptures, which is quoted by St. Peter in his first homily, the Pentecost homily, where he says, in the days to come, he's quoting Joel, I will pour out my spirit upon all humankind, not just upon prophets, upon all humankind. Your young men will see visions and your old men will dream dreams. And initially I thought, oh, bummer, dude. So the young guys get visions and the old guys just have memories of long ago, dreams of long ago. That's not what it means. There are synonyms. It's what's called in Hebrew poetry Semitic parallelism, where you use exactly, for the same idea, you use parallel words. There are synonyms for each other. So dreams and visions are exactly the same in the Hebrew system. So whenever you come across a dream, a night dream, or you come across a vision that someone's having, they're totally identical. And so, for instance, basically, a dream is a mystical experience you're having when you're asleep, and a vision is a mystical experience you're having when you're awake. So when you read the Bible and you come across, you have to realize this, otherwise you're going to miss a whole lot of very important teachings. Dreams and visions are exactly the same thing. So you look at dreams in the Hebrew scriptures. You look at, for instance, the great dreamer Joseph of the multicolored coat, who interpreted dreams even for the Pharaoh, a major character in the book of Genesis. And you look at people like Isaiah. Isaiah had this famous vision in the temple in Jerusalem in the year 742 BCE. And we can date it very precisely because he mentions a king, a Babylonian king, of whom we have records outside of the Bible. So this vision took place in 742 BCE, a famous vision of the cherubim in the temple, filling the train of the temple. And then you have a prophet like Ezekiel, who flourished about 550 BCE, when the last two tribes of Israel are in exile in Babylon. And he has these great visions like, some of them, the valley of the dried bones. And God says, Son of man, can these bones live? And he says, I don't know, you're God, you tell me. And then the bones begin to come together, knit themselves together, and flesh. And then there's a whole bunch of corpses lying there. And the voice says to him, Son of man, can these bodies live? And he says, I don't know, you're God, you tell me. And then God breathes into them, and they all come alive. And it was meant to be a kind of a prophecy of what would happen to the last two tribes of Israel, who in fact are set free when the Persians overcome the Babylonians in 538 BC, and they return back to the land of Israel. So you have all these great prophetic characters who are depending upon visions/dreams in order to lead the people. You look at the New Testament, and if, for instance, Mary, the mother of Jesus, hadn't paid attention to the vision/dream she had of the angel Gabriel, when he said, you are to be the mother of the Mashiach. If Mary hadn't taken this vision or this dream seriously, there wouldn't have been a Jesus. And if Joseph, according to the New Testament, particularly Matthew's Gospel, hadn't listened to his dreams, the child Jesus wouldn't have escaped the first 2 years of life, because Herod was attempting to kill all the boy children in Bethlehem. And so if Joseph hadn't listened to his dreams, there would have been, Jesus would have been cut off at the knees by age 2. If Peter, in the Acts of the Apostles, there's a famous dream Peter has in the Acts of the Apostles, where he's having a siesta, and at that time the roofs of the houses were flat, so he's upstairs on the roof, fast asleep, having a siesta after a big meal, and all of a sudden he has a dream or a vision in which this huge sheet is let down from heaven. And there's all kinds of animals walking around inside in it. And a voice says to him, Peter, take, kill, and eat. And Peter looks at what's crawling around and says, God forbid, I keep kosher. I've never eaten treif in my life. And the sheet is taken back up. And it's repeated 3 times, and Peter makes the same response each time. And finally, the voice says, Peter, don't call anything that I have made unclean. And Peter realizes what the message is. He's telling Peter, literally, that you can't differentiate between Jew and Gentile, that nothing is clean and nothing is unclean. There's only children of God. If Peter hadn't taken this dream seriously, the Jesus movement would never have included anybody except Judeans. So he took it seriously. When Paul had his famous dream vision on the road to Damascus, and he struck blind, if that hadn't happened and he hadn't taken it seriously, the Jesus movement would have been a very little local group. It would have never become an international Christianity. So if these people didn't take their dream vision seriously, history would have turned out very, very differently. And my favorite example for Christ himself, you find it in Matthew's Gospel in chapter 17, the Transfiguration, where just days before he dies, Jesus takes Peter and James and John up on top of a mountain, Mount Tabor, and he has this extraordinary dream/vision in which Moses, who was dead 1,250 years, and Elijah, who was dead 800 years, appeared to him. And it's such a powerful vision that it's what's called a shared vision. Sometimes people report shared dreams. Often husbands and wives sleeping together will wake in the morning and spontaneously report a dream, and the other person has had exactly the same dream at the same time. So this was actually a shared dream, or a shared vision, so powerful that Peter saw it, James saw it, and John saw it, and they saw Moses and Elijah talking to Jesus. And what did it represent? It represented this kind of nexus point between Jesus' history as a Jew and the mission he was on to kind of create a reformation of Judaism. I don't believe that Jesus came to set up a different religion. I don't believe it for a moment. In some sense, it's a pity that ever happened. But that, like all of the great prophets before him, he was offering a renewal of Jewish spirituality. But that wouldn't have happened unless he had taken this vision seriously. So that's my second point. The Bible is full of people listening to and acting upon their dreams/visions. That's my second point. My third point, and I'm going to call it the twin illusions of time and space. I had this weird dream on Wednesday morning. I woke up with this weird dream. And in the dream, I was watching planet Earth spinning on its axis. And I was watching it circumnavigate the sun at the same time. And I'm watching, I'm thinking, okay, what's the message here? And I'm watching the Earth, not from looking down on the pole, as if I were at the equator looking at the globe in front of me. So the globe is like in front of me. I'm at the equator here watching laterally. And all of a sudden, now I know that the Earth is spinning from west to east, which is why the sun appears to go down in the west. But it's the spin of the sun that's going the opposite direction. As I'm watching, all of a sudden, every single animal on planet Earth faces west, including all the humans. And they all begin walking. And then they start walking faster and faster. And as they are, the globe starts speeding up. This traction that they're creating, going faster and faster and faster. And finally I'm told, now the Earth is spinning twice as fast as it used to. But it's still going around the sun in 1 year. I begin to think, okay, what's this telling me? So the Earth spins on its axis, and we call that 1 day, one circle we call a day, and we divide that up into 24 hours. And it goes around the sun once every 365.2424 days. Let's just say 365. And we call that a year. So a year consists of 365 days. But now, because the Earth is spinning twice as fast, the day is only going to take 12 hours. Okay, so now a year is still going to be, 1 year going around the sun, but that year now is going to consist of 730 days, because the Earth is spinning twice as fast as it was. So I'm thinking, what does that tell me? It tells me time is totally made up. It's only a matter of, perspective, where you're measuring time from. I begin to see this really, really clearly. And then I remember a dream I had just a few weeks ago again, where in this dream I'm with my grandfather, Daddy Jim, who was very, very important to me, and I'm with a little girl who's 6 months old, who's a grandniece of my friend Arlen. Now the problem is this. My grandfather died in 1956, in December 1956, and his entire life he never left Ireland. And this little girl was born on the 23rd of April 2018, and she's never left Connecticut. And here am I bringing the two of them together. A guy from 1956 and a little girl from 2018 and me. I don't know where we were actually meeting, but I suddenly get it. Time doesn't make any. Time is made up. Time is an artifact of a particular state of consciousness. And I realize that one of the benefits of dreams is that because there is no time, there's an instant manifestation of thought. When we're in physical form, we have a thought, but luckily we can't manifest it immediately. Otherwise, our freeways would be littered with dead bodies. Every time somebody cut you off and you gave them the finger, you say, I'm going to kill you. They'd be dead. We've littered dead bodies. So gratefully, there's a time buffer between our thoughts and the manifestation of the thoughts. Now, if we think them frequently enough, it'll happen at some stage. You're going to get into a rage or in a future lifetime. But there's a time buffer. But in dreams, there isn't a time buffer. You think something, you think it is. Immediately. So it tells you immediately that, time is made up. It's an artifact of a particular state of consciousness, as is space. And so I remember a dream years and years and years ago. Every time I went home to Ireland from the United States, it would take me about 4 or 5 days to kind of catch up my sleep cycle. I find it very difficult to get to sleep at night. But on this particular time, I'm in my mother's house, and I go to bed, and I finally fall asleep. And when I'm asleep, I have a dream. And in the dream I'm back up at my home in Healdsburg, in Tirnanog. And I'm up there, I'm walking around my house, and I decide it's time to go to bed. So I go to bed and I fall asleep, and I have a dream. And in that dream, I'm back in Kenya, the last mission I lived in, a place called Kipsarman, and I'm interfacing with parishioners and saying mass and stuff like that. And then the dream ends, and I realize, oh my God, I'm not back in Kenya, that was just a dream. I'm up in Healdsburg. I'm asleep in my own bed in my room. And then I woke up a second time and realized, I'm not in Healdsburg. I'm in my mother's house in Cork City. But I wasn't sure at that stage, so I knelt up in the bed And I pulled back the curtains to look out the window to see, was this my mother's, was that her back garden? And it seemed to be. No, maybe there was more layers to it, I have no idea. So that's often called a false awakening, where you believe you're dreaming, and then you think you've woken up, only to realize you've been embedded in a whole series of dreams. And the question is, how often can you wake up? And so I've said to you many, many times that I have this formula that I operate by where I say, life is a dream that the ego is having. And the ego is a dream that the soul is having. And the soul is a dream that spirit is having. And spirit is a dream that source is having. So we live in nested dreams. The question is, how many times can I wake up and figure out where I'm really at? And which is the most pristine and important level of reality? So time and space in some senses, they're just artifacts of a particular state of consciousness. That's my third point. The fourth point then, I want to look at some of the jobs that dreams do for us. And according to Carl Jung, there are 4 kinds of dreams. And I'll mention what they are, say a little bit about them. And then I'm going to add 2 other functions of dreams that I believe dreams also perform. So according to Carl Jung, there are 4 kinds of dreams. The first one he called housekeeping dreams, just ordinary dreams. Second one he says dreams that come from the personal unconscious. The third level are dreams that come from the collective unconscious. And then there was the 4th category he called special dreams. So I'll just illustrate those 4 briefly. So the first are just ordinary housekeeping dreams. These are the kind of silly kinds of stuff that goes on in your dream and you're kind of, what the hell is that about? It doesn't make any sense to you whatsoever. And Jung would say that in some senses, it's just the psyche trying to clear the garbage of the day. It's like you go to your fridge and you see, oh God, that meat has gone off and those sausages are stinking, and what's that down there? Oh, that's milk and it's gone sour. And you clean it out to make room in your fridge for the stuff you're going to buy today. So the first level of dreams is just all that kind of mishigas that's meaningless and you're trying to get rid of it as soon as you can. That's the first level of dreams. And then the second level, Jung says, are dreams that come from the personal unconscious. So this is where you manage to go underground and you're looking at the root systems, and the nitrogen and the soil and the water content, whatever, so that you can understand what's happening to your plants in the garden. So these are things coming from your own personal experience. So they deal very often with anxiety issues, relationships, finances, that kind of stuff. So typically an anxiety dream will be something like, you can't find a toilet. You really need to go to the bathroom and you can't find the toilet. Or you find one and it's really stinking. There's no way that you can sit down there. Or there's no privacy there. So there's some issue around the bathroom, and you're not able to avail of it. So that's anxiety, some kind of anxiety in your life. Something you need to get rid of and you can't for some reason. Or there are, late dreams. You're late for the train, or you're late for the bus, or you're late for an exam, and you're all anxious about it. Or one of my favorite ones that I get occasionally is late for mass. Stop laughing, Lisa. I find myself typically, I'm in a big, big church with a group of priests celebrating, and the procession has started. They're going to start mass, and they're all processing up the aisle, and I'm inside in the vestry. I'm looking for my vestments. I can't find my vestments. And I'm thinking, holy God, they'll be on the altar. I'm looking, put on an alb, and the alb comes to here. That one won't do. I'm trying to grab something else. And I finally get out there, and I have to do the reading, and I pick up the reading. I can't make any sense whatsoever. I think it's supposed to be like reading for Genesis. It looks like a manual for an F-250 Ford truck. And I'm trying to, what's the spiritual message here? I can't make any kind of sense of it. So those are kind of anxiety dreams. They'd be like from the personal unconscious. The third level of dreams then Jung would talk about, there are kind of dreams that come from the collective unconscious. They're coming from our nature as human beings. They come from with deep, deep, deep archetypes. And these are the kind of dreams that when you have them, you'll remember them for years and years and years and years. And frequently they'll be in colour. And so these are dreams. I remember in 1953, I had this great dream, and you can still recount it. So these have archetypes, very important archetypes, which are part of the human psyche. Now, there are some people in the community then, like the shaman for the tribe or the prophet for the group, who dream from this area on behalf of the tribe or on behalf of the group. So the collective unconscious dreams are not just meant for you, the dreamer. They're meant for a wider community. And so you're supposed to share these dreams. The problem is you have to be really, really careful who the prophet is, or who the dreamer, or who the shaman is, when they come from the collective unconscious. So for instance, if the shaman happened to be an Aztec emperor who in his dream was told by God that he needs to do mass murders once a year to satisfy the gods, and you kill 80,000 people in a mass sacrifice because the dream told you that, and he's the prophet, obviously that's not a dreamer you want to be following. If you're going to listen to Martin Luther King Jr. say, I have a dream, you realize this is a dream worth following. And you get it that the function of the prophet is often misunderstood. The function of the prophet is not to predict the future. It is to prevent the future. It is not to foretell the future. It is to forestall the future. Because the prophet or the shaman is the one among us who can see where we're headed. You know, he can see clearly what we're doing, and therefore you just follow the graph where it's leading. So the prophet and the prophetess, the job is to call us back into alignment with our contract, with our incarnational contract. So we have to be very, very careful whom we choose to follow as our prophets or our shaman. If the prophet is leading us into anxiety and fear and xenophobia, that is not a prophet to follow. If the prophet is making us feel love and compassion and the ability to dialogue with each other, that is somebody worth following. So that would be the third class of dreams, according to Carl Jung. And then his fourth category was, he called them special dreams. So there's a few groupings there. So like precognitive dreams, like the dream I had in London in October 1986, which was followed 2 weeks later by a real event. So that in some sense is precognitive, as well as being, symbolic. There are lots of accounts that people around 9/11, for 2 or 3 weeks before 9/11, people were having extraordinary dreams which were prophetic in some senses, precognitive about some disaster. Now the problem is, when you have a precognitive dream, you need to understand 5 elements. Often there's a few elements missing. So what's happening? When is it going to happen? How does it happen? Where does it happen? And why does it happen? So very often, unfortunately, in these precognitive dreams, we may get 1 or 2 of them. We may get the what, or the when, but not the where or the how. And so it becomes really, really difficult to translate that into kind of actionable responses. But they're important dreams. Then the second category of special dreams would be psychodiagnostic or self-diagnostic dreams, where you get a dream that tells you about your own state of health. And I got that frequently in Kenya. Once I created my glossary of terms, I knew that every time I dreamed about a horse, I was going to be sick within 2 or 3 days. I'd either have malaria or typhoid or something. Every time there was a horse in my dream, the horse represented somehow my physical body. And somehow my dream picked up on it before the symptoms began to manifest. I've read many, many cases of mothers with little babies who get dreams about the child's health, and they bring them to a whole bunch of doctors, and the doctors say, there's nothing wrong with your child. We've done all kinds of tests, you're making this up. They're going to accuse her of Munchausen by proxy, that the mother just wants to get attention by bringing a sick baby, but there's nothing wrong with the baby. And she keeps insisting, I got this in my dream, I know exactly what the problem is. And finally she persuades them to do one more test, and they find out what the issue is. So these kind of diagnostic dreams are very important. And then another kind of category of the special dreams would be creative dreams. So very, very often, great scientists have depended upon their dreams for great breakthroughs. It was true of Einstein. It was true of Kekule, the guy who discovered the benzene ring. He was asleep on a bus and he had a dream where he saw a snake biting its own tail, and he created the benzene ring. It was true of the guy who invented the sewing machine. It came to him in a dream. So very, very often, it's dreams that alert us to the possibilities. I can say for myself that 80% of the ideas I come up with personally, for stuff I write, or homilies I give, or lectures I give, is stuff that comes to me in dreams. And so I'll wake up in the middle of the night, I have an idea, I go out, I'll write down what the dream tells me, and then I'll try to figure it out the next day. And since I don't have to wake to an alarm clock anymore, except on Sunday mornings, I can stay in bed in the morning when I wake up and just start processing, what the last dream I had, and try to figure out what it's telling me, and then write it down. So dreams are a great source of creativity. So they'd be like the 4 categories that Jung talked about. I'm going to add 2 more categories of my own. The first one I call trans-dimensional dreams. And these are dreams where I believe that when we're dreaming at night, there's a confluence of life, of kind of dreams, of lifetimes that we're living. I've said many times to you before that I believe that since I don't believe in the past, present, or future, I don't believe in past lives or future lives. It's all happening right now in parallel universes. There are enough universes out there to accommodate any combination of choices you choose to make in your lifetime. We spin off these worlds in which you get a chance to act these out. And so you're taking part in a myriad of lifetimes right now. So how come you don't know that? And my kind of metaphor for that is, so how come you think you're just Karen Rubin and nobody else? So imagine I were to put on a movie day in dedication to Seán Penn, one of my favorite actors. And I persuade 10 different movie theaters in the Bay Area to put on a different movie starring Seán Penn beginning at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. Now, in one of these movies, he's playing the part of this vicious killer. It's called, I think, Dead Man Walking. You know that one? He's a vicious character. In another one, he's playing the part of a mentally retarded adult who's raising a very precocious little 7-year-old girl. It's called I Am Sam, that one, remember that? Now, Sam as Sam has no idea that there's a character in a movie called Dead Man Walking. No idea whatsoever. But Seán Penn is aware of all the characters he's playing in all of these different movies. So there's a soul, which is playing Karen Rubin in this particular line, but that soul is playing a whole bunch of other roles in other lifetimes. And sometimes these coalesce in our dream state. So we have dreams, and we don't recognize the other characters in it. Because sometimes in these dreams, in these other lines, I can be the main actor, or there's another life in which I can be just a supporting actor, or there are lifetimes where I'm just making a cameo appearance. But all these are important because I'm getting information and I'm helping these others. So I would call those trans-dimensional dreams. So when you're dreaming at night and you find yourself in a strange location with strange people whom you don't recognize, the question then is, what are you contributing? What are you learning from this? Your parallel processing. And the last category I would mention is a very important one. It's a category in which we have encounters, a category of dream in which we have encounters with the departed. Now, I think that dreams are the easiest way for our loved deceased ones to communicate with us for this reason. That in the waking state, we're operating in what the Hindus call the gross body, the physical body, which is vibrating between 400 and 700 nanometers, between infrared and ultraviolet. It's really, really, really dense. Souls are vibrating at the 6th level of body. So Hinduism says there's a physical body, there's an etheric body, there's an astral body, there's a mental body, there's a causal body, there's a soul body, and then there's Brahma, cosmic consciousness. The souls are at level 6. So for the souls to come all the way from level 6 down to level 1 is really difficult. They have to become denser and denser and denser. So there's an agreement that they'll come halfways and we come halfways. We go from the dense physical body through the etheric plane to the astral, where we dream, and they come down from the soul through the causal to the mental to the astral, and it's much easier for us to meet at that level. So it's like somebody from LA deciding to meet somebody from Seattle, and they decide to meet in San Francisco. It's a lot easier for us to meet there. Now, there's a lot of research at the moment called ADC, after-death communication, or sometimes called EVP, electronic voice phenomena, where since the advent of electricity in various formats and electronics, whether it's radios, television sets, computer screens, where voices or even images of the dead appear spontaneously. And there's a whole bunch of study going on right there now. So it seems like that whatever frequency or vibration is coming through electronically, it's easier for the dead to use that modality to communicate than to kind of physicalize themselves. But their communication goes on. So I remember a very powerful dream I had of my great-grandmother. I was 10 years old when she died. I called her Muddy because I couldn't pronounce her name. And she died on the 6th of June in 1956. And I'd never dreamt about her until the 25th of October, 1993. And I'm in Palo Alto at that stage, 37 years later. I've never dreamed of her in the interim. And all of a sudden, she comes into my room in Palo Alto, and she comes over to me. She looks like she's in her 40s. And she kissed me, and then she said a very strange thing to me. She said, "To me, I am." And I woke up thinking, to me, I am? What in God's name does that mean? I'm thinking, I finally got it after 4 or 5 days. She was saying to me, I'm not just a dream element. I'm not a figment of your imagination. I'm not a memory from the past. I have an existence all on my own. To me, I am. And then I realized she was almost quoting, Exodus chapter 3, verse 17, where Yahweh, identifies himself as Ehyeh, Ashir, Ehyeh, I am who I am, or I will be who I will be. She was saying, I have an existence all on my own. And so for me, that's the normal way in which the dead communicate. So that's a sixth way in which dreams are of benefit to us. And my final point before I open it up, I'm going to call it lucid dreaming, lucid living, lucid dying. So if you spontaneously have a lucid dream, so you're dreaming at night and you suddenly realize, oh my God, this is a dream. Or if you develop the facility to try to, lucid dream on demand, one of the rules they give you is that if you're actually in a dream and you're not sure if you're in a dream or not, there's a very simple way to test it. You go up to a solid object and you try to put your hand through it. And if your hand goes through it, you're dreaming. If your hand doesn't go through it, you're not dreaming, you're awake. It's a very simple test. So I remember doing it one time, 2011, and a friend of mine, a woman called Polly DeLevitt, had died 2 or 3 years before of cancer. And in this dream, suddenly I'm climbing a mountain and I see Polly, and she's dressed in this beautifully gorgeous outfit, like a multicolored jacket. And I see her, I said, Polly, you're dead. I'm thinking, whoa, if Polly is dead and she's in my dream, maybe I'm dreaming lucidly. So I put my hand against the rock face and I push, my hand goes right through it. I say, okay, I know now I'm dreaming and I know I'm lucid, so I can do anything I want with this dream. It's not subject to the laws of time, space, or causation. None of the physical laws apply. So I can do anything I want with this dream. Now, the question is, we think that, we live in a world where we're dealing with solid objects. So I can't push my hand through this. So this must be solid. That's an illusion as well. That's not quite accurate. Because it consists of particular molecules made up of atoms, which are 99.999% empty space. It's just that the subatomic particles and the atoms and the molecules, are in a chaotic condition, so that the chaos in my hand and the chaos here is not aligned, so I can't push through it. But suppose I could create some kind of coherence. So one of the most extraordinary photographs I've ever seen in my life was a tornado someplace in Texas. And the result of the tornado was there was this steel I-beam, about this thick steel. And there was a straw from a wheat field had been taken up and had pierced right through the steel, stuck in the steel, half in one side, half out the other side. A piece of straw that you could bend with your hands, right through it. And I'm thinking, how in God's name did it happen? Somehow, for some moment, all of the subatomic, particles of the steel aligned coherently, and so there are gaps between them. It's like if you went to a swimming pool, and there's like 500 kids inside this huge swimming pool, and you try to dive in to swim a lap, good luck. Yeah, there's no way you can do it. Now, if, however, you could persuade everybody to line up in lanes, and you create 10 lanes, and they all swim in the same direction at the same time, now you can dive in, you can swim up. Everybody's able to do laps. It's the same pool, same number of people, but instead of chaos, there's coherence. And that's what dreams tend to do for us. Dreams allow us to create coherence in the system, so that you can put your hand through a wall because the dream wall and the dream you are in coherence with each other. And then the trick becomes, now that you've learned to dream lucidly, can you begin to live lucidly so that you may die lucidly? So what does lucid living mean? It means being totally in alignment with the purpose for which you came in. It means being totally aligned with love and compassion for everybody. And in that sense, nothing can stop you swimming laps. And dying then is the realization at the end of this that you've really fulfilled your mission. It's Jesus on the cross saying, it is completed. I finished what I came to do. Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. And that's my prayer for Michael Lane this morning, no pun intended, that Michael find his lane and the coherence to swim the last lap and touch up and be pulled out of the pool of incarnation by God. Open up for question and answer discussions. Carmencita.
Father Seán, I wanted to remind you that when we were planning Hans's memorial, you told me, I want you to remember the first dreams you're going to have about Hans. And I said, well, I probably dream, but I never remember what I dream. And you said, anyway, just pay attention to them. And I did. I had 3 vivid dreams about Hans. The first two, he just came to me, hugged me, and kissed me. And every time I said, "Sweetheart, you are alive." And on the third dream, and they lasted just a few seconds. On the third dream, he appeared next to me, and I said the same thing. "Sweetheart, you are alive." And this time he answered me. He said, "Of course I'm alive." And this time I'm not planning to leave.
That is beautiful, Carmen. That is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And that's the ultimate reality, and that's the ultimate truth. You got it from God's mouth, using Hans as the medium to tell you that. Beautiful. Beautiful. Patricia?
I had a similar type of dream after my dad passed away. We were very close, and I was not asleep. I was lying on the bed in the daytime, resting, and I had my eyes closed, and I was very relaxed. And I was a little girl of maybe 6 or 7, walking along the beach, and I was holding the hand of a man. And as we walked, I looked up, and it was Jesus. And then we came to a large stone that was about the height of a chair, and he sat down and put me on his lap and put his arms around me. And then when I looked up, it was my father.
Wow.
And he just looked down at me and with just total love and told me that he was always there with me and to not be afraid. And I started to cry, and I became aware that I was awake, and I had real tears on my face. So I felt that was a real encounter with him on another dimension.
That's beautiful, Patricia. Thanks a million, love. Johanna?
I used to have lots of dreams, and I had dream journals and things like that. And in listening to you here, I've realized for quite a few years, I've had almost no memory of dreams. And I was wondering if you can, am I like dead?
Sure.
But I have some, but not very many.
Okay.
And then the other thing is, I was wondering if I can make a comment on your late dream.
Yes, sure.
I don't think it's that you were late. I just think you don't fit in with those priests anymore whatsoever. And for a long time, I think that's the outfits don't fit.
Come up here and give a homily. Come up here and give a I love it. I love it. How much do I owe you?
$100.
That's brilliant, Johanna. Wow, I love it. So I take that at pieces in, and I respond to the first piece. So dreams are a form of relationship. It's a relationship you have with yourself. It's a relationship that the waking consciousness has with the astral body or the soul body even. And like any relationship, it has to be cultivated. And so if you're not paying attention to dreams, then very, very often dreams, they dry up in a sense. And it's very easy to restart the practice. If you just keep a notepad at the side of the bed and a pencil, and when you wake up, you're going to wake up, typically a sleep cycle is at 1.5 hours. The dreams tend to get much longer over the course of the night, so the best ones are going to be towards the end of the night. But if you wake up, at the end of every dream cycle, you're probably going to move into bed, because you're going to go from, when you start sleeping, you go from stage 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, which is really deep sleep. Then back up to 3 to 2 to 1, and then you dream. And at that stage, you're very close to wakefulness, and most of at that stage will move around in the bed. So we're very close to wakefulness. If you have the energy to wake yourself up at that stage, and just record 2 or 3 key words, you don't even have to turn on a light. You have to say like Kenya, a camel, 1976, and go back to sleep. And you get up in the morning, and you've got a series of notes. You can recreate it once you have a few key words. If you only get a single image, work with it. There's a great story that John Stanford tells in one of his books where he has a dream, and in the dream he sees a pink peach pit. That's the only thing that's in the dream, a pink peach pit. What the God? A pink peach pit? So he wrote it down. And then he remembered, when he started working at Peachtree Avenue in Atlanta, where he'd done some training and had some adventures, so he could recreate this entire scenario. So whatever you can remember, put it down, and then in the daytime, work with it. And there's many ways of working with it. So the time I spent in London, I devoted maybe 6 hours a day to working on the dreams of the night before. So the first thing, I recorded them. Second thing, I would try to analyze them, kind of psychoanalytically, try to make sense of them, looking at archetypal symbolism and then associative symbolism. So there are two kinds of symbols in dreams. Archetypal symbols, mean the same thing for everybody who dreams. Everybody who's dreaming about a mountain is dreaming about some kind of a penetration of God's immanence into her transcendence. So it's some kind of an epiphany, some kind of a peak experience, literally. So archetypes would be true for everybody. But then the same symbol could have associative symbolism. So Annika just come back she was in Mount Shasta a few weeks ago. Now I know of Mount Shasta, but I've never been there. I know a lot about it. But if I were to dream Mount Shasta and Annika were to dream Mount Shasta, they'd mean totally different things to us, because I just have a kind of a book knowledge of it, and she has an experience of being there. So associative symbolism means you're the best interpreter of that particular symbol for your life. So look at the associative symbolism and the archetypal symbolism. Then meditate on it. Just bring it into meditation and see what it comes up with. Or a very powerful way, Jung called active imagination, where the following evening, you go into your little meditation space at home, you turn off the lights, maybe light a candle or burn incense, and you recreate the imagery of the dream. And you believe that every element in the dream has symbolic value. The chair in the dream has symbolic value. The mountain did. The person you interacted with, everything, the clothes you're wearing, everything has symbolic value. And you ask it, what is the message that the chair is giving me, or the mountain is giving me, or this particular outfit is giving me? So you ask each element what it represents for you. So there's many, many ways you can draw. You're an artist, you can draw. I will do that occasionally. If there are some vivid images in the dream, I'll draw them out, in some way. So any way that you can externalize the imagery from within and work with it, then you start building a relationship, and then the dreams begin to occur more frequently. And then you're going to find after 2 or 3 months, they're more even than you can handle. And then you're going to have to just choose what you can spend time with. But it'll come back. If you put energy into any relationship, it'll build. 11. Guys, I'm really sorry. I mouthed on and on and on. So before we continue with our Eucharist, let's offer each other a sign of our peace.